guys? I'm Lance Nacho Martinez, welcoming you back to another edition of the My Detroit Sports Show. And I don't want to be that guy. I don't want to be that angry guy talking about sports on a microphone. I think you get too much of that, sports talk radio as it is, but I'm pissed. I'm really pissed off. And usually I have some notes on my computer to go by that, not really a script, but it's a kind of guidelines to, stuff to talk about. But I don't have that today. I'm speaking from the heart. I'm speaking the truth. I'm speaking my mind because I'm pissed off. Well, one, I just came back from Florida, 85-degree weather every day, to this cold mess we got with Detroit like usual. I'm pissed off about that. I'm pissed off because our sports teams are in the toilet, and there isn't much to look forward to. You know, and Justin Brown and I, when we started My Detroit Sports, we said we weren't going to talk negative about these sports teams, but it's hard not to when you're writing the columns for the Red Wings, for the Pistons, and you're saying, well, they lost this, they dropped another game, but we'll get them next time, you know? Because I know, and you know, that we're full of it. So I don't want to be that guy. I really don't. I don't want to be negative, but like I said, I was in Florida, and I had the option to go to spring trainings, check out the Tigers, and I had extra. My family had extra tickets. Like, hey, you want to go check out the Tigers? I'm like, can I pay you not to see the Tigers because they're trash, you know? But anyways, I just don't know what to do as a fan, and I know you guys are fans of Detroit sports teams, or you wouldn't be watching this or listening to this when we eventually put them on streaming services to listen on your phone and all that. But for now, we're on YouTube. But my question is, as a Detroit sports fan, what do you have to look forward to? I mean, aside from the Lions, you know, we have three historically good sports teams. The Tigers, the Pistons, and the Wings. They've all won multiple championships. And now it's we're starting to kind of fade into obscurity where, you know, the Tigers haven't won it since 84. The Pistons haven't won it since 2004. And the Red Wings haven't won a cup since 2008. And it's just unacceptable to me. And you look at them now, and it's like, okay, the Lions missed the playoffs. You know, the Blake experiment's not working out with the Pistons. The Red Wings are heading back to another season of missing the playoffs after a streak of, 25, 26 plus, whatever, 25, 26. And the Tigers are tanking to be the worst team in baseball to get the number one pick. I get that, but, I'm just asking as a sports fan, what do you have to look forward to? For estate planning, trademarks, and business agreements, visit brownbrotherslaw.com for all your contractual needs. All right, continuing my rant about how Detroit sports teams are trash at the moment. It sucks. I hate bashing them, but because I believe that we have elite franchises still, and we haven't been living up to that standard. You know, I think that great franchises find a way to retool, rebuild, and get back to the promised land. And you see other franchises like the Boston Celtics, like the Lakers, that have retooled, revamped their roster, got rid of their assets and turned them into draft picks, and then are big players in the free agency again. And I feel like with the Pistons, they never did that when they had an opportunity to, get rid of Chauncey, Rip, Tayshaun Ben, and so on. And they kept on to those guys longer than they should have, and they turned them into what? Charlie Villanueva, Ben Gordon? Come on. And it's moves like that just made me question, like, what the hell are we doing? And now ever since Larry Brown and ever since those 6 straight Eastern Conference Finals appearances, it's been musical chairs with the coaching. And we're about to see that again with Stan Van Gundy because he just has no direction with the team. You give away draft picks, you give away young talent to bring in Blake Griffin and his extremely large contract, And how's that pairing with Andre Drummond going right now?
Looking for more sports-related content outside of Detroit? Then check out some of our posts over at ifollowsports.com.
All right, up next, I want to bring in my main man, my good friend, Garrett, from over at Kolo's Corner. What's going on, Garrett? And how the hell do you pronounce your last name?
It's Kolodziej.
Kolodziej, okay. All right, man, first I got to ask, just what went wrong with the Red Wings this season?
So, Lance, I think it's kind of threefold when it comes down to what went wrong for the Red Wings this season. I think the first thing was they just didn't get consistent goaltending. I mean, there'd be times where Howard would play very well for 2 to 3 weeks straight, and then would have a couple games he'd give up 3-4 goals apiece. Peter Mrazek was supposed to come in. He got his confidence rattled a little bit. He wasn't named the starter at the beginning of the season, and I think that messed with him a little bit. That not having that confidence from your coach, I think, really messed with him in a lot of different ways. And so when he did come in, he really didn't feel like maybe he was playing normal. He was maybe playing like he was a little bit scared, a little cautious, like he was going to lose his job. And, he played well, but again, ran into the same problems that Jimmy Howard did. I also think this team, Lance, didn't really know how to consistently score. They've got goal scorers on this roster with Anthony Mantha. I'd throw Andreas Athanasiou in there. Gustav Nyquist is another guy I think that can put up 25, 30 goals consistently with the right team, mind you. But they just haven't been able to find a way to consistently score and get points. I mean, that's what happens when you're devoid of a lot of superior talent on this team. This team's got talent, but it's not what it used to be. And when you can't score like that and relying on a young kid like Mantha and Larkin and Athanasiou to score, and be the primary point getters for this team, it can be difficult to try and win games, and that's what's happened this year. And I also think that they've never really rebounded from long-term losing streaks. There was a time after Thanksgiving they were in the playoffs. They were at a 10-9-3 record, 1 point away from being the second seed in their division, and they went on a 7-game losing streak. Then they won a couple games, got back into the playoffs, and then I think a month later they lost 6 in a row. So they haven't been able to put together a meaningful stretch of games, been able to rebound strongly from that, and been able to score and get good goaltending. I think that's really been kind of the trifecta.
All right, and we saw the trades for Tatar and Mrazek. Why did these trades go down?
So I think the reason why they went down are two completely different scenarios. With Peter Mrazek getting traded to Philly, I think that was more of a need for a team that is chasing a long-term playoff run. They're a team that has stability right now at goaltender, but they lost both their goalies for the season to pretty significant injuries. And the Flyers, as I mentioned, they want to make a deep playoff run. They believe that they have the pieces to do so. And they've got the offense to definitely keep themselves into games. So I think for them, they just wanted a guy who's played in the NHL and who's been consistent, and so, or at least been used to what the league has instead of what's in their system. And so they picked up Peter Mrazek, and the Wings got something for an asset they weren't going to be able to bring in the offseason. They weren't going to offer Peter Mrazek any sort of contract in the summer. He's a free agent at the end of the year, so it would have made him an unrestricted free agent, and teams would have been able to give him any sort of money that they would have wanted to. But the Wings got an asset back on that. It's a 4th-round pick that can turn into a 3rd-round pick. It's looking like it will be a 3rd-round pick for the Red Wings this year. So you got something back, and that was kind of Ken Holland's goal all along when it sounded like you weren't going to be able to get anything just 6 months ago. And then I think with Tomas Tatar, it came down to, Lance, simply put, the Wings needed to facilitate the rebuild. They needed to start rebuilding quickly. They saw that they had an abundance of bad contracts, and I'm not going to say that they're littered with them, but there's a couple bad contracts on the roster, and Tatar was making $5.3 million on the cap. He's a good player. He's not probably worth the $5.3 million that he was owed. But when you're a guy like him who's in his late 20s trying to play for a team that's going to rebuild now here for the next 2 to 4 seasons, to get your best hockey when you're in your late 30s, you want to free some of those spots up to the young kids and give yourself a chance. And you've got a great return back from a Vegas Golden Knights team that's trying to win a Stanley Cup, believe it or not, in their first year, which is crazy to think that that's how far we've come, Lance, in 20-something years of sports, to where now we have an expansion team potentially trying to win a Stanley Cup. But, you got a good deal back for a guy who still has a lot of potential, a lot of offensive upside. So the Wings are going to use these picks. They're going to start the rebuild, and they're going to start addressing some of the major flaws in this team that I mentioned previously.
So moving forward, just what is the general outlook for the Wings this offseason going into next?
This is where I think it gets kind of interesting. This team right now, after the end of the season, which it looks like they won't make the postseason, even though they've been hovering around it, it looks like they won't make the postseason. They don't even know who really will be their general manager. And Ken Holland's contract's up at the end of the season. There's a possibility that you could be getting a new head coach. There's a lot of things that are kind of going on right now, I guess, if you're a Detroit Red Wings fan. And I think some of what you've seen this year is what's going to continue. The rebuild is still going to continue. I think you're going to see some bad contract getting shipped out. Maybe a guy like Darren Helm could possibly be on the move. He's got a good cap hit, and there's teams that might want a guy like him who's a good penalty killer, got some good speed. You know, he's limited offensively with what he can do, but again, really good player, been playing quite a bit in this league. Maybe a Luke Glendening, which we've heard the rumors coming from him, especially around the trade deadline. This team's going to be in a full transition, and they've got 4 picks this year in the top 40 selections of the NHL draft. By all accounts, this is going to be a very deep and very exceptionally gifted draft class, and I think the Wings are going to put themselves in a position to get some very good young kids that can possibly even make the roster as early as next season. So I think we're going to see this team in a rebuild, and I think we're going to see continued progression from the guys who are already on this roster: Tyler Bertuzzi, Anthony Mantha, Andreas Athanasiou, even Dylan Larkin, who looks like he's really taking the next step to be the leader, I guess, of this team. And so they're going to find themselves there. And the Wings need to re-sign all 4 of those guys that I just mentioned. They also have Martin Ferk that's going to be a restricted free agent this year as well, too. He kind of rounds out the group of 5 players that's going to be a restricted free agent that really should be the focus of the Wings coming in. And, you know, a lot of people, Lance, want to talk about getting some young kids and freeing up some roster spots. Well, at forward, you might have 2 or 3 spots next year open up to some kids, and then you're probably going to have another 1 to 3 on defense. So this is going to be a very young team next season. I wouldn't be surprised if the Wings don't really go out and spend a whole lot on the free agent market this year. I think they're going to focus on developing from within and trying to get back to where they were in the late 90s and early 2000s. And they want to try and build this thing to be stable in a long-term success plan.
I appreciate your insight, Garrett. That's Garrett from Kolo's Corner. Why don't you tell everybody how you can check that out?
You guys can tune in to my radio show, Kolo Sports Corner, on 88.3 FM WXOU. That's on Tuesday nights at 8 o'clock. You can also get a hold of me on Twitter at Kolo Sports WXOU. I'll be tweeting a lot of stuff out there, too. So the Wings kind of head into the final 15 games of the season. They're going to be also hitting the draft lottery, so that'll be kind of interesting to see where they're at. Currently, right now, they look like they could finish in the top 5, but, you know, there's a few teams that are still kind of on the Wings' heels to make them maybe finish a little bit farther back. So anything interesting I find about the Red Wings, I'll be posting up again on that Twitter account at Kolo Sports WXU or on Kolo Sports Corner on Facebook as well. You guys can get a hold of me over there.
All right, man. Thanks a lot. I appreciate it. I'll talk to you soon.
Stay up to date with your favorite Detroit sports teams with our My Pistons Weekly and My Red Wings Weekly columns.
All right, guys. I want to thank you once again for checking out the My Detroit Sports Show. I'm your host, Lance Nacho Martinez. You can check me out at Grand Theft Nacho on Instagram. Make sure you follow My Detroit Sports at MyDET Sports on Instagram, Twitter, and Snapchat. You can follow us on Facebook and YouTube /My Detroit Sports. I want to thank Kolo once again for joining us, providing some insight on the Red Wings. And in the next coming weeks, I got a special guest. I want to see if I can get on the show. I'm not going to announce it right now, but I know he's really busy. In the next coming weeks, too, we're going to talk sports fashion with Ty Mopkins. He's the creator of these great starter jackets. Make sure you check that patch in the inside, because if it doesn't have a Ty Mopkins patch, then your ass is still sitting on the bench. And again, want to thank you once again for tuning in. I'm Lance Martinez, and I'll talk to you soon.